Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Cripple Chronicles podcast. This one feels a bit weird to me because I have my headphones on. Man, I sound weird when I talk with my headphones on. It's just a bit odd for me. However, the reason why I have my headphones on, if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, Becca, what the hell are you going on about? I have my headphones on because there's some videos that I am going to watch this week on the podcast. So I just thought it would be easier for me to hear it properly with this, and then I can also obviously put the videos in post edit like I usually do. But let's actually get into the introduction for this episode instead of me basically spending a minute explaining why I've got headphones on when it's not necessary. That's me. Whatever things come to my mind, they always come out my mouth. Okay. Hi friends, welcome back to the Cripple Chronicles. I am Becca and I really appreciate you being here today because I feel like I say this almost every episode, but this one's a little different. It's heavier, it's more emotional, and it is deeply personal to me. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I feel like this episode is going to be a tough one, but it's also a conversation that we need to have. So thank you for showing up, listening, and holding this space with me. Part of the reason why I haven't been posting as frequently is because I am working on a deep dive series a deep dive video that I'm genuinely excited about, and I will be sharing more about that soon. But today's episode is one that has been sitting on my heart for years, to be honest. I've tried to write it so many times, and every time I just couldn't hit record. I'd sit here and stare at my notes and feel this weight in my chest that meant it felt impossible to speak. But I'm finally ready to talk about something that is both heartbreaking and incredibly important, and that is epilepsy and SUDEP. If you have never heard the term before, SUDEP stands for sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. It is as devastating as it sounds, and it is something that I never knew existed until it took someone that I loved. And I bet that many of you listening to this might have never heard of it either, and that is exactly why we need to talk about it. So this is the Cripple Chronicles podcast, and this episode is my story of Samantha. When I was in high school, my friend Samantha and I were incredibly close. The kind of close where you just get each other without needing to explain anything. Those friendships where you can just communicate with a look, and the inside jokes have built up layers, and it's like having your own little private language. That was what our friendship was. I can pinpoint the period of time when Samantha was diagnosed with epilepsy. I know she was 16, but that period of time feels really hazy to me, that I don't know if I was still at school or transitioning to college, or if Samantha was still in school. I don't know if we were as close friends at the time of when she got diagnosed, but it kind of, back then, it felt like it just became a part of her life, a part of who she was. Looking back, I do feel like that's significant. It wasn't, to me, like this dramatic revelation or life-changing moment that everyone kind of gathered round to discuss. It was just, Sammie has epilepsy now. Like saying somebody has brown eyes or plays football. And maybe that is my memory because we weren't really close at the time, or because that period of time feels really foggy. But the thing that feels terrifying to me is nobody ever told me that epilepsy could be fatal. It wasn't something that we were taught in school. I wasn't taught about it in uni. It wasn't something that doctors warned us about. It was this silent threat that I didn't even know existed that was lurking beneath what I perceived just to be a manageable condition. Before I go further, I want to share a short video from Epilepsy Scotland which talks about SUDEP and includes part of Samantha's story told by her incredible mum, Jeanette. I am going to put it in here, and this is the first video that I saw that made me think that it was maybe time for me to talk about this. And a bit after this, I have the longer video of Jeanette sharing Samantha's story, and we're going to watch that too because it's important to me.
To fly the really big planes, the really heavy transporters. I got a phone call from his brother saying he's not answering the door. I said, can you see through the lock, see if he's all right? And there was a little crack in the door, and he said, Mum, I think he's lying on the floor. I kicked the door in. And he said, Mum, he's on the floor. I think he's really asleep because he's cold. I think he's asleep. And I knew he'd gone. I didn't need anybody to tell me I knew he'd gone.
I'm just pausing it slightly because I think I've watched this video probably 4 or 5 times and it's still like I've got goosebumps. It just gets me every time.
We hadn't been told about SUDEP. Did not know it was a thing.
SUDEP stands for Sudden Unexpected Death in Epilepsy, and it is obviously something that is related to the condition epilepsy. It's not well known and it's not well understood, but it does account for approximately 100 to 200 deaths per annum in Scotland.
So she took music at college, and they quite literally did help her find her voice. She went busking at the top of Cannon Street. The hairs on your arms would stand up and you were just like, oh my God, where does that voice come from? A lot of people have in the past said to me, at least it's not a fatal condition. So that in general in society, people don't really understand that the condition itself can take people. They always think, like me, that it's going to be the seizure in an unfortunate place that's going to do it. So yeah, it is important that people know that it can happen, even just in general in society, so that people are a wee bit more understanding of why people might be so anxious about their relative that's living with epilepsy.
We have no idea what the mechanics of SUDEP are. How does it happen? We think what happens is when somebody has a seizure, and part of the seizure is that they stop breathing, they don't start breathing again, but we don't understand, as I say, the mechanics behind that. So there needs to be a lot more open discussion around SUDEP, and there needs to be a greater level of understanding and lots more research so that we can find out why it happens, how it works, and then we can look to stop it.
So that kind of gives a bit of background of why I'm sharing this episode today. I'm recording this round about the beginning of June. However, when it is edited, it will be probably round about the time of Samantha's 8th anniversary. And I'm obviously going to share more about her, but I do miss her a lot. Even if we drifted for a period of time, when we came back together, it felt like no time had passed at all. However, to move forward with the episode, there is a longer video with Jeanette sharing more about Samantha's life. And when I watched it initially and then preparing for this episode, it hit me like a wave. It really kind of took me right back to that moment. Like, if you have experienced even just a family member very close to you dying, the moment where your world kind of splits into a before and after when you think about it. I wanted to add this video into it. It is around 10 minutes long. However, again, talking about this is something that is important to me, but I never want Samantha just to be a statistic. She was a person, and I think there are a lot of people who still talk about her and keep her name alive, and I think that's important. When I play this video, I'm going to try and not pause it too much and kind of come back to things later on as, I'm just trying to think of the best kind of way to do this. I also wanted to kind of share the words that Jeanette wrote before I play this. The longer interview on its own, I'm sharing it so it'll come up in my memories. People who live with epilepsy are among the strongest people you'll ever meet. Sammie didn't get any warning for seizure onset, and given the injury she suffered from having seizures, there were times where we thought, maybe this is the time she'll give up and want to stay at home. She never did. So proud to be your mama, Sammie. Love like starlight, never dies.
At work, and when her dad picked her up on his way past, he brought her down the road, and it was that you were on tenterhooks waiting for that third seizure, and it just didn't happen. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe we've got away with it this time. Sammie was a life force. She filled a room when she walked into it. She didn't even need to open her mouth. You were instantly aware of her presence. She, in my opinion, she was gorgeous, but she was a very kind person. I was actually, knowing that I was doing this interview, I was looking back, a guy at her work had done a speech for her first anniversary of her death, and he was saying that she would come in on a Monday morning in an unstoppable good mood, which she must have developed on the train when she was going to work. And she was kind beyond her years. For a while they didn't know that she had epilepsy. It took her a wee while to share that. But they were exceptionally good with her. She was a singer. She played guitar, she played piano. She wrote her own music, she played her own music. She did covers of other people's music. When she was at school, she actually auditioned for something in the school with the singing, and the teacher said that, no way. You are not, that's just, no, it's not going to happen. But she was determined. So she took music at college, and they quite literally did help her find her voice. And my God, was it worth her finding? She did various different events, but she went busking at the top of Buchanan Street, and she got interviewed by, I think it was an organisation called Busk at Dusk or something. I can't even remember the name of it now. She got interviewed for that, and she was I think she was 17 at the time when that happened.
It was Busk before dusk. Samantha Dunyan is a 17-year-old singer-songwriter from Scotland who performs acoustic-style music. Samantha was busking on Buchanan Street in Glasgow on April 16, 2015. For it only being Samantha's second time busking, her confidence was amazing, and she has a lovely voice to complement her guitar playing. By mixing up covers and originals, Samantha was engaging to the public with her amazing style. I'm going to get back to Jeanette's video before I start greeting.
Music was an outlet for Samantha. You know, she could get emotion into the songs that maybe she couldn't readily express. Apart from that, but she was very talented. There was a couple of songs in particular. If she sang them and she was on it, the hairs on your arms would stand up, and you were just like, oh my God, where is that voice coming from? Sammie never achieved seizure freedom. She was on one medication for quite some time, And she would get periods where she was 2 months seizure-free, and then she would be 3 months seizure-free. And the last time she was almost 6 months seizure-free. Her consultant put her onto a second medication, but she only got that a week before she died. She was taking seizures at work, and she tended to have a cluster, which meant if she had one seizure, she had 3. The day that she passed, she had 2 seizures at work, and when her dad picked her up on his way past, he brought her down the road, and it was that you were on tenterhooks waiting for that 3rd seizure, and it just didn't happen. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe we've got away with it this time. But unfortunately, she'd gone upstairs to rest, came back down and said, I just can't get to sleep. We had a lovely conversation with her, and she went back upstairs, and I took her medication up at 10 o'clock, and she was gone. Very first appointment when Samantha was diagnosed, the consultant did tell us about SUDEP. Very much, keep taking your medication, you'll be okay. And in fairness to him, I don't know what else he could have said. Keep taking your medication, and it might still happen. So we were aware of it as a thing. I think initially I went into shock. I was half of my brain just shut down. Would not compute what had happened at all. I went into shock. I got up the next day, putting my feet on the floor, and I'm thinking to myself, what kind of mother are you that's getting out of your bed to put your feet on the floor? And
I had to pause there because a few times I have watched this, I've watched Jeanette kind of say, what kind of mother are you to be able to put your feet on the floor and move on? And I know it's not like that, but you also had 2 other daughters, and Jeanette's somebody that I look at, and I don't understand as a parent how you can move forward, and they have done so much in Sammie's memory, and I guess I kind of hate that grief shows up in that way where you think that you're a bad person when it's the total opposite.
of course, the person that put her feet on the floor that morning wasn't the same person that had put her feet on the floor the day before. I had a 14-year-old daughter who was coming up, our pre-exam year. I used to imagine that Samantha was out with her friends. She was at work. She was anything but where she was. And that was, I suppose, a kind of coping mechanism at the beginning. But inevitably, reality does hit you, and it's not pleasant when it does, and it still does. It's not a case of, we're almost 8 years down the line. Every day when I open my eyes, Samantha is still gone. It's just devastating. I don't know that I could really find words to explain it. It's the worst thing that's ever happened in my lifetime, and I have lost both my parents. I have lost my brother. This is just in a league all of its own. It's just horrendous. And you get up in the morning and you put a face on, and I don't mean makeup. You put a face on that allows you to go out and carry on and keep moving forward. I have a younger daughter. I've got an older daughter who's got 4 girls, and you need to move. You need to keep moving forward. But there are days where it's very crippling. And Samantha always, when Samantha passed away, she was actually texting someone that she had met through a support group for people with epilepsy. And she was texting him. He contacted me afterwards and said that Samantha had actually saved him. He was on the verge of doing something quite terminal, and she had saved him. And the number of people who contacted me after Samantha had died to say, your Samantha did this for me, your Samantha did that for me, and she never told anybody. She just quietly went about helping people, being kind, lifting them up when nobody else would. Further down the line, I think she may have moved to a more counselling role, like trying to help people, because that was very much right from she was tiny. There was someone lying incapacitated in the street with various bottles beside them. And I think Sammie was about 4, and nothing would do, but we would stop that car and her dad would get out and see if that person was okay. Got a mouthful of abuse for it. That was how she was right from a very young age, very compassionate, very, very aware of people around about her. And if you were in a group and somebody was kind of sitting quiet, she was always the one that went to them, made sure they were okay. She wanted people to have a voice. I do remember coming out of Samantha was 16 when she was diagnosed, and at 16, you don't have to have your parent with you when you go in for your consultations, and nothing would do but Mum would sit outside. But when she came out, a number of times she would walk away ahead of me, and I'm like, what's wrong? He's told me, he's telling me these things and I don't want to hear them, and he doesn't need to tell me every time. Well, maybe he doesn't think the message is hitting, and that's why he tells you. Although the very last appointment was 2 weeks before she died, and she said he was lovely because she was coming to a period of acceptance about her condition, and she says I just sat and spoke to him all the questions that I had, and he answered every single one of them. He was great, which was hope for the future for us. And obviously 2 weeks later that was just completely destroyed. But yeah. I think people need to know that it's a possibility. It's very difficult as when you're talking about anxiety. My anxieties were my daughter got off at Charing Cross Station in Glasgow and went to work, and she came back down those stairs at night, and if I thought anything was going to take her, that's what I thought would take her. She would take a seizure on the stairs and right down, or she'd go in front of a train. And it's just, a lot of people have in the past said to me, at least it's not a fatal condition. So that in general in society, people don't really understand that the condition itself can take people. They always think, like me, that it's going to be the seizure in an unfortunate place that's going to do it. So yeah, it is important that people know that it can happen, even just in general in society, so that people are a wee bit more understanding of why people might be so anxious about the relative that's living with epilepsy. Yeah. I really was in a very bad position with anxiety, and I had to seek counselling myself. I got cognitive behaviour therapy, which was run by a nurse, and she said to me to think about a situation about the worst thing that could possibly happen to Samantha. And I just looked at her, and she said, I mean, she breaks a leg, it'll heal. You just don't get this at all, and you're a nurse. But that's the thing that we're up against, and I guess that's why people with epilepsy as well, that largely Samantha's condition was unseen, because there was very, very few people actually seen Samantha having her seizures. So that happening to her, SUDEP, would have been quite a shock. You know, how could that happen to her? She never had epilepsy in the first place. Always proud of her, always. And even the way she refused to lie down to my instincts to wrap her in cotton wool. It was like, no, you know, I'm going to live a life. I actually phoned the helpline here, and it was Stuart I was talking to, and he did say to me, you're basically telling your daughter she can't live a life. And that was a real... but I needed it. And kind of tried to change my way of dealing with things. But immensely proud of her.
Well, that got me again. Watching Jeanette talk about Samantha gives me goosebumps every single time, because it reminds me of the person that she was and the impact that she made on my life. Every year, I'm going to take these headphones off because it feels too weird. Every year, Sammie comes up on my memories of her singing the song that she wrote for her grandpa after his death, and gets me every year. You don't expect to get a call like that, to hear that your childhood best friend, somebody that you were dancing with in a club just over 6 months ago, somebody that you texted a few weeks ago, has died. Samantha was only 19. 19. And I don't need to say anything else about how it happened, because I think Jeanette managed to talk about it incredibly well. But remember the exact words when I got that phone call, that Samantha's dead. And I can remember asking before it even crossed my mind, is this a joke? Because it didn't make any sense. My brain couldn't process it, and my friend just snapped and said, why the fuck would I joke about that? The way she said it was just angry, hurt, exhausted. And I think that's when, well, the first point it became real. I think it had to become real quite a few times over the years, to be honest. But it felt like the air had just been sucked out of the room. Like the friend that she was texting in the support group when she passed, a point that I got upset about when Jeanette was talking about that she saved me too. And I'll get into that more when I talk about Sammie later. But I know that she had such a positive impact on so many people, and the loss that was truly felt by so many. Before we go any further, I do want to just take a moment to honour Samantha's family, especially Jeanette, our dad, and our siblings, and the incredible work that they have done since Samantha's death. Over the last 8 years, they have raised somewhere, I think, between £30,000 and £40,000 for Epilepsy Scotland. It might be more than that. I didn't find a total, I just kind of estimated it from the fundraisers that I've seen over the years. Let me tell you about what money like that can actually do, because it's not just numbers on a fundraising page. That money has helped to fund new and expanded services like 24/7 support helplines for people having seizures, or families in crisis, or people like Jeanette in that video where she phoned up and he said, you're telling her that she can't live a life. It's funded grief counselling specifically for families who have lost someone to SUDEP. It's created community education programmes that go into schools, the kind of education that we never got, teaching young people that epilepsy is serious and that it requires respect and understanding. Their dedication has provided tangible, real-world support to families when they are at their most vulnerable, and it raises awareness in communities that have never heard of SUDEP before. And it's created a space for people to talk about a topic that is too often whispered about or ignored entirely. Samantha's name lives on in every single person they help, and every family that gets support when they need it most, and every young person who learns about epilepsy safety because of the work of our family and the money that they've raised to support other people. And I hate that it means that I can't see her around and feel her presence, but she continues to help so many people through the world of her family, and those that will continue to speak her name until they're no longer here. However, like mentioned in the video, we still don't fully understand SUDEP. We don't know exactly why it happens, which means there is no way to prevent it with certainty. And that's terrifying for thousands of families living with epilepsy right now. There are theories, like mentioned, problems with breathing, heart rhythm, brain function during seizures, but theories aren't cures. Theories are not prevention, and that uncertainty, that not knowing, is something that can haunt every single family that is impacted or affected by epilepsy. That's why I finally hit record today. That's why I've told myself so many times over the years that I don't need to do an episode on this, that it'll be too painful, too raw, it doesn't fit the theme of the podcast, but it's bullshit, honestly, because this is disability. This is the reality of living with a chronic condition. This is grief and loss, and the way that illness touches every aspect of our lives. And with the 8-year anniversary, it feels like it matters more than ever, especially because there has been a 40% increase in the deaths from SUDEP in the last 8 years. 40%. That's not a small statistical blip. That is a crisis that is not being spoken about loudly enough. So let me tell you about Samantha. Really tell you about her. Like the reason why I mentioned for playing the longer video of Jeanette, because Samantha was so much more than a statistic or a cautionary tale. I think the video that I played kind of solidified that Samantha was never going to be any kind of statistic, even if she was still here today. And it does feel cliche to repeat that she lit up a room, but I really don't mean that in a cheesy way. But like what Jeanette said on a Monday morning, getting that energy on the train, going into the office with a smile that it was probably more suited for a Friday afternoon, and it was the same infectious light as soon as I saw her on that night out. At one point, everybody called her Sammie D because I always have a big massive bottle of Sunny D. Not the California one, I'm pretty sure it was like the one that's not so common, but that ended up being a thing where we just drank Sunny D. I'd come over our house with bottles of it. After years of getting on with our own lives, now 2 years feels like such a short amount of time. It can fly like it can fly by, but it didn't feel like that at the time. I think when we were friends from second year to fifth year, it felt like 10 years. I don't know if it was being younger, being in chaotic environments, worrying about exams and future careers whilst trying to figure out who we were as people, nights drinking alcohol and getting too drunk, playing stupid word games, staying up all night texting, going to youth group, and eventually away for a wee residential where we ended up hiking through nature, walking through waterfalls, going cliff jumping. Times now that really feel very distant. Samantha was somebody that got me in a way that few people have. You know, those people that kind of see right through your bullshit and know who you really are and they love you anyway. That was Sammie. I felt as a kid that I masked a lot. I took different attributes from different people and not really sure how to fit in or be liked, or worried that I would come off in some kind of wrong way. I don't really remember those feelings of anxiety with Sammie. There were so many sleepovers where we could just look at each other in a certain way and burst out laughing, and that kind of laughter that makes your stomach hurt and tears stream down your face. I was such a lost person back then, and I think Sammie saw that. She was one of the few people who knew what was going on in my life behind closed doors, even if I still downplayed it slightly. She was a person that I went to when I felt like there wasn't really a way forward. We went to guides together and got into trouble countless times. We'd have each other in our BDM names. When back, that was the height of showing somebody that you cared. She was brutally honest, absolutely hilarious. And around her, I felt seen in a way that was exactly what I needed as a confused and anxious teenager. I can't even remember exactly when we became friends. Like, I think it was near the end of first year, but maybe like the start of second year. I really can't remember. But I remember feeling like hanging out at our house was an escape from all of the chaos of being a teenager. We'd dye our hair in our bathroom. I'd go home with pink hair, bits of hair cut off, making jokes about being married because we spent so much time together, and sending each other fucking song lyrics like they were love letters. And yeah, we argued like teen girls do, dramatic, over the top arguments about boys or friends or who said what to who. And do you know what? She was really there for me when it mattered. When the world felt like it was falling apart, Sammie was some solid ground. And I felt like she had a laugh that could literally shake the walls. And again, not in some cheesy, corny way, but in a real infectious way that made everybody around her smile, whether they wanted to or not. And her smile really could light up rooms. And I think that's why we clicked so well. We were both a little chaotic, a little loud, a little too much for some people. But we made sense together, and I think we both just wanted to make the world a better and easier place to float through. when I was struggling with self-harm as a teenager, Samantha tried to get the school to help me. And at the time, I felt completely betrayed. I thought my friends had gone behind my back and broken my trust and made my pain public. And I was angry at her for weeks. But now, looking back with adult eyes, I see that she was actually doing the brave thing, the caring thing. She was trying to help. And the only way that she knew how, she saw somebody that she loved hurting themselves and she could not stand by and watch. That takes courage, especially when you're young and you don't really know how the world works yet, and going through the same feelings. I can't remember if it was before or after that the school had got involved with Samantha's mental health and included her family. I was so worried that my parents would be involved. I think that was one of the things that scared me the most. But I can also acknowledge that whenever that played out, that there was some jealousy there too. And as an adult, it does feel confusing. Like, how could I be angry that my friends had went behind my back to get me help, where I said I was fine and the school just dropped it? But Sammie's parents were called and mental health professionals were involved. And it wasn't ever that I was angry at her for getting support. But again, something that I've touched on before about shame and self-blame, kind of feeling like I was too defective to be helped. After high school, we drifted a bit. Life happened, jobs, relationships, mental health struggles, the messy reality of becoming adults. We'd see each other's posts on social media, maybe comment on a photo or share a memory, but we weren't in constant contact anymore. I feel like the two kind of things are very close together of when I last saw Sammie. So I'm going to get talking about a night that we had out in September weekend, but there's another really clear memory to me where she was doing a gig in a church and I was there and I remember going to support her, and it feels like those periods are very close in time because I'm pretty sure it was that night that she was singing in the church that she told me about her epilepsy and some of the seizures that she had had and the medication that she was on. And then we saw each other again, and I feel like that's why it clicked so well, because it had not been that long. But again, like I said at the start, all this time frame is very, very foggy, so just bear with me. In September of 2015, 2016. In September of 2016, we saw each other. We were both out drinking with different friend groups, and it was one of those really nice, just timing things where we bumped into each other somewhere. I can't even remember where it was, and decided that we'd probably catch up. I think we were both in Spoons at the time, you know, Spoons, the top tier of British social life. And we spent hours just talking and drinking cheap drinks and laughing about old times. And I think we were still in there at the last call trying to decide if we were going to go to the same area or not. I think Sammie ended up stealing a glass from there because she wasn't finished her drink. She was like, I'm not leaving it here. But we ended up going out clubbing, and it really was like no time had passed. Like, obviously as kids we didn't go out clubbing, but we danced badly to music that was too loud, just laughed, caught up on everything. And she was telling me about her job, her flat, her dreams of making music, and I was so proud of her, like proud of the person that she was becoming. We had both struggled when we were younger, and I did really feel like she was getting somewhere and happy, and she deserved it more than anything. It really felt like things were kind of fitting together, and when you've been through struggles as a teen with something, it's the kind of bond where all you want is for them to succeed. When we were out and on that night, I remember her telling me about her medication. I think it was at the night where she'd been singing before this. I remember her telling me about a seizure that she had where she had ended up knocking her teeth out. like I mentioned, I didn't think epilepsy could be fatal, and I don't really know if any of us did. If someone had told us that epilepsy could kill, would we have been more vigilant? Would we have known what signs to watch out for? But we weren't there when it happened. She just went to sleep and she didn't wake up. Thinking back I wasn't equipped to know what to do if my friend had a seizure. Like, how do I properly support her? Like, listening to the video from Jeanette where she talks about Samantha, I kind of realised, like, those 6 months seizure free were kind of just after I saw her, and it is like I'm glad she got that period, but she's also not here, and that's fucking hard. Going back to the day I got the call in June 2017 that she had died, I could not breathe. I literally did not feel like I could get air into my lungs. I'd literally just gone no contact with my mum. We were in the middle of a really difficult period in our relationship, but she was the first person that I called, crying hysterically down the phone that my friend had died. She couldn't even remember, she couldn't even understand what I was saying. I can remember feeling like everything was just crashing down. Like, how could this actually be happening? A few days later, my friend who had given me the news and I went to Samantha's house and we brought flowers. I can't remember what kind, but I do remember standing in the shop just feeling completely surreal, like I was watching somebody else's life. And we went to our house together and I kept thinking that she would come down those stairs at any minute. Like, this was all some horrible mistake, some mix-up that would get sorted out and we'd laugh about it later. I stood outside the house, that same house where we spent countless afternoons, sleepovers, laughs, and it was hard to make sense of the silence inside. I was numb, completely and utterly numb. It's like my brain just stopped processing. I went through the emotions of being sad, of comforting other people, of trying to make arrangements, but inside I didn't really feel anything but just sheer confusion. I had a trip planned the week of Samantha's funeral. I was considering if I wouldn't go, but it had been in the works for the past year. I still changed about my plans to make it to the funeral. I went to Ireland for 2 days, and then at 1:30 in the morning on the day of Samantha's funeral, I got a bus from Cork to Belfast, flew to Edinburgh, got the train from Edinburgh through to Helensburgh, or Cardress, where the crematorium was, done my makeup on the train because our friends had agreed that we would be glam and colourful and happy for her. I went through the motions on the train, lack of sleep, grief building. I got off the train, I tried to get a taxi to the crematorium, which was just fucking awful. They were wanting to charge me like double because, like, well, if we come from Helensburgh to go to Cardress to go to the crematorium, blah blah blah. Thankfully, I see my mum's van drive past, and after everything we'd been through, after going no contact, there she was going to my friend's funeral. So she gave me a lift to the service. We did not talk about our problems. I don't know if we even talked about anything. I just sat in the back of her van and then went to be with my friends. The place was packed, absolutely packed. Every seat was filled, every row of people standing at the sides, teenagers, adults, elderly people, all there because Samantha had touched their lives in some kind of way. And when they brought her in, when I saw that coffin and realised that she was actually inside of it, I lost it and completely broke down. At the wake afterwards, we laughed, we cried, I smoked way too many cigarettes. We shared stories about Sammie that made us smile and ache at the same time. People told me things about Samantha that I'd never known, and I'd told them stories that they never heard, and it was beautiful and horrible all at once. After that, I threw myself into work, being in my new house and all of the busyness of life. Staying still meant feeling hurt too much at that time. I wrote poems about her that I never showed anyone. I dreamed about her. Vivid dreams where she was still alive and we were teenagers again, and waking up was like losing her all over again. Still had vivid dreams where we were adults that felt right, and waking up and checking my phone and realising that none of it was real. I carried this quiet grief that I didn't know how to express or where to put it. And it wasn't until after my own accident years later that I actually let myself really feel it and really honour it for what it was. I want to take just a moment to talk about epilepsy in itself, because I think understanding the condition helps us to understand why SUDEP is so scary and why it needs to be talked about more. Epilepsy is a neurological condition that affects the brain and causes seizures. It is one of the most common serious neurological problems in the world, and yet it is one of the least understood by the general public. Around 1 in 100 people in the UK are living with epilepsy right now. That is around 600,000 people. 600,000 people and their families dealing with this every single day. There are many different types of seizures, not just dramatic tonic-clonic seizures that you see potentially in movies or on TV shows. Some seizures look like zoning out, staring into space for a few seconds. Others involve repetitive movements like lip smacking or hand wringing, and some cause confusion and disorientation. Some are so subtle that they are missed entirely. This variety makes epilepsy harder to spot, harder to diagnose, and even harder to live with. Because your seizures don't look like what people would expect seizures to look like, you face skepticism, dismissal, and misunderstanding. Management is also different for everyone. What works for one person might not work for another. Some people find the right medication and live seizure-free lives. Others try medication after medication with limited success. Some people need surgery, other people manage their condition through lifestyle changes, trying to avoid triggers and maintaining sleep schedules. Here is a hard reality that no one wants to talk about. People with epilepsy are 3 times more likely to die prematurely compared to the general population. 3 times more likely. SUDEP accounts for around half of the 1,200 epilepsy-related deaths in the UK each year. That is 600 lives every single year. Many of them young like Samantha. Many of them people who are managing their condition the best that they could. What can support actually look like in practice? There are helplines available 24/7 for people having seizures or families in crisis. Do you know what it means to have somebody to call at 3 a.m. when your child has just had their first seizure and you're terrified and you don't know what to do? That phone call can mean everything. Support groups for newly diagnosed people with epilepsy. Support groups for people newly diagnosed with epilepsy, helping them navigate the fear and uncertainty of life with a chronic condition. Grief counselling specifically designed for families who have lost someone to SUDEP, because regular grief counselling doesn't always address the specific trauma of sudden, unexpected loss. There are public awareness campaigns that go into schools, workplaces, community centres, teaching people about epilepsy safety, seizure first aid, and the realities of living with this condition. There is research funding that supports studies into SUDEP prevention, better seizure prediction, and improved treatments. This is the kind of legacy that most of us can only hope to leave behind. A legacy that actively saves lives and supports families every day. And while we don't have all of the answers about SUDEP yet, we do know that there are things that can reduce the risk. Taking medication consistently and prescribed and as prescribed is crucial. Regular check-ins with specialists help to monitor how treatment is working and catch problems early. Avoiding alcohol is important because it can interfere with seizure medication and lower seizure thresholds. Not sleeping alone when possible means that somebody's there if a seizure happens during sleep, which is when many SUDEP deaths occur. There is also emerging research on wearable seizure monitors and smart alarms that can detect seizures and alert caregivers automatically. These technologies are not perfect yet, but they're promising steps towards a better safety for people living with epilepsy. There are also people advocating for seizure dogs, something that I have seen on social media. Specially trained dogs that can detect when a seizure is about to happen and alert the person or their family. These dogs can be life-changing for some people, though they're not suitable for everyone, and there is significant training and resources that are required for this. If you or somebody you love lives with epilepsy, please know that you're not alone. Your fear is valid. Your worry about seizures, about SUDEP, about all the unknowns is all completely justified and understandable. Your story matters, your experience matters, you deserve support, understanding, and access to the best possible care. And if you're grieving someone lost to SUDEP, like I am, like the people who loved Samantha, in all variations, please know that your grief is valid too. It's okay to be angry about the lack of awareness, the lack of research, the fact that so few people understand how serious epilepsy can be. It's okay to feel frustrated when people make assumptions about epilepsy based on outdated information or media portrayals. It's okay to advocate loudly for better research, better support, and better understanding. Before ending this episode, I do want to touch on something that also doesn't get discussed enough: delayed grief, and how we sometimes tell ourselves that we don't have the right to grieve. When Samantha died, I found myself caught in this awful internal dialogue. We weren't as close as we'd been in childhood. We'd grown apart. We were living different lives. I told myself that because we weren't in regular contact, because so many other people were affected by her loss, that I didn't have the right to feel devastated. This is what grief researchers call disenfranchised grief, something that I've talked about in terms of accidents and disability. This is grief that goes unacknowledged or uninvalidated by social norms. It's particularly common when deaths occur among distant, disapproved, or unrecognised relationships. But here's what I've learned and what the research confirms. There are no rules for grief, and everyone experiences loss in their own way. Childhood friendships really do hold a special place in our heart. They're a part of our foundation, part of who we become. When we lose someone that was significant in our formative years, even if distance is growing, that loss can hit us in ways that we do not expect. The grief might be delayed, it might not hit you immediately, it might surprise you with its intensity weeks, months, or even years later. Research shows that experiencing the sudden death of someone close is one of the most prevalent and potentially traumatic experiences, affecting over 30% of adolescents. The impact of sudden loss can be particularly complex because there's no time to prepare, no chance to say goodbye, no opportunity to reconnect or reconcile. If you're experiencing delayed grief, or if you're questioning whether your grief is justified, it is. Your relationship with that person mattered, the memories you shared mattered, the person you were because of knowing them mattered. You don't need anyone's permission to grieve, and you don't need to justify the depth or the timing of your feelings. Whether you're mourning someone lost to SUDEP recently or years ago, whether you were close or you'd grown apart, whether you were the primary griever or someone out in the periphery, your grief deserves recognition, respect, and support. I just want to share some resources before we finish, because information can be life-saving. Epilepsy Scotland, where the videos were from, provides comprehensive information, support services and advocacy specifically for people in Scotland. They have helplines, support groups and educational resources all available. Epilepsy Action offers support, training and information across the entire UK. They have an excellent website with detailed information about different types of epilepsy and seizures. The Epilepsy Society focuses on research, advocacy and care throughout the UK. They are doing crucial work on understanding SUDEP and improving seizure prediction. SUDEP Action is dedicated specifically for raising awareness about SUDEP and preventing these deaths. They provide resources for families and for healthcare providers. Cure Epilepsy is a global non-profit focused on epilepsy research. Funding studies lead to better treatment and hopefully cure or prevention. Epilepsy care in under-resourced areas worldwide, because epilepsy affects people everywhere and everyone deserves proper access to care. All of these organisations have websites with detailed information and many have helplines if you can call if you want immediate support. These links will be linked down below in the description. Thank you so much for listening to this. Sharing it has been one of the more emotional things that I've done on the podcast, but I'm glad that I finally did it. I miss Sammie every day. I think about all of the things that she didn't get to do, the songs that she never got to write or sing, the family that she dreamed of having, and the impact that she could have made in the world in ways that we will never know. Like I said, I still have some vivid dreams where she tells me that this was all just some kind of wild mistake. But I also think about the impact that she already made, the money her family has raised in her memory, the awareness that they've created, the lives that have been saved because of their work. That is a legacy worth celebrating. If epilepsy has touched your life, or if you're grieving somebody lost to SUDEP, please reach out for support. Use the resources I've mentioned, talk to your doctors, connect with other families who understand what you're going through, because you don't have to carry this weight on your own. Let's keep talking about epilepsy, SUDEP, and invisible disabilities. Let's keep raising awareness, demanding better research, better treatments, better support for families, and let's never stop remembering the people that we've lost, not just for them, but for the people that are still here fighting and still hoping. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Tell your friends that you love them, like really tell them, and don't just assume that they know. Hug your people tight, check in with the people who matter to you, and if you have someone like Samantha in your life, someone who really sees you and who gets your jokes and who's there when it matters, never ever take them for granted. Life is fragile and beautiful and heartbreaking all at once. Let's treat it and each other with the same care they deserve. This has been the Cripple Chronicles. I've been Becca, and thank you for holding space with me today, for listening to Samantha's story, and for being part of this conversation that I find is very important. I'll see you next time. Bye!